Welcome to my channel. Today I will be reading from the Let's Not Meet subreddit. So let's jump into it. The first story is titled, I Was Chased by My Own Reflection. This happened about 8 years ago. It was just after midnight when I was driving home from a night out with some friends. We decided to go to a bar in the city center for a couple of drinks, which soon turned into dancing and having a great time until around midnight, when we decided to head home. All three of us live in the same direction, so it was an easy decision to carpool. We got in the car and started heading home. The drive was pretty normal. We were just talking about the events of the evening and laughing. Then suddenly my two friends looked at me, then at each other and said, "You see that?" I asked them what they were talking about, but they just shook their heads and carried on with the conversation. I thought nothing of it until about 10 minutes later when it happened again. They both looked at me, then at each other again and said, "You see that?" Once more I asked what they were talking about, and they told me that my face had appeared in the rearview mirror. Now, I know this sounds like a joke between friends, but they were deadly serious. I looked in the rearview mirror, and there was no one there. I tried to laugh it off, but they insisted that I should take it seriously. They didn't want to continue driving with me because they were too scared. I tried to calm them down and told them that there was nothing to be worried about. However, they refused to listen, and they made me pull over to let them out. I dropped them off at their house and went on with mine. About 20 minutes later, I began to feel uneasy myself. I had a feeling that something was following me. As I drove home, I kept checking the rearview mirror to make sure that I was alone. And just as I approached my street, I saw a white van behind me. I didn't think much of it. I slowed down and turned into my road. When I turned around, I noticed the van had stopped at the end of the road. Now, I don't know why, but this made me really nervous. I continued driving slowly towards my house, glancing in the rearview mirror every few seconds. The van remained at the end of the road the whole time I was driving. When I finally reached my front door, I got out of the car and ran inside. I locked the doors and the blinds and waited for my heart to stop racing. The next morning, I told my friend what had happened. He told me that it was just my imagination. I'm sure that if you think about it, you can come up with a reasonable explanation for this story, but I couldn't. To this day, I still get goosebumps whenever I think about it. I haven't driven at night since, and I always sleep with my bedroom door open in case I need to escape through it. I know it sounds stupid, but ever since that day, I have never seen my own reflection at night without getting scared. And that was the first story. Now for my second story, today, it is titled Mirror Image. This is an experience that my friend's brother had while he was serving in Iraq. My friend's brother was deployed to Iraq in 2004 as part of the military police. One day he was working security at one of the buildings on base. It was his job to walk around outside the building and make sure everything was okay. On this particular day it was brutally hot and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. The sun beat down on the turret tops in the sand, making it almost impossible to see in front of you. He was walking along the wall when he saw an Iraqi man standing by a clump of rocks about 200 meters away. He was wearing one of those white robes that are common in the desert, yelled, "Hey," and the Iraqi man put his hands up and started waving. Thinking it was friendly, my friend's brother waved back and continued on his way. After about 5 minutes, he turned around to check on the Iraqi guy and noticed that he was gone. Shrugged it off and figured he must have wandered off to go home or something. He continued his patrol, and after about 15 minutes, he heard a voice in his headset say, "You have a visual on the west side of the building. Pete, you have a visual on the west side of the building." His brother looked around to see where the voice came from, but it wasn't important. He knew what it meant. He turned and walked back to the clump of rocks, where he'd seen the Iraqi man only to find no one there. Walked back to his post, thinking it was probably some rookie soldier who had made a mistake. Suddenly, the voice crackled again in his headset. "You have a visual on the west side of the building. Pete, you have a visual on the west side of the building." He sighed and explained that he already knew about the visual and that whoever was reporting it needed to verify before reporting. He turned and started walking in the opposite direction. Again, the voice said, "You have a visual on the west side of the building. Pete, you have a visual on the west side of the building." At this point, he was annoyed and turned to confront whoever was messing with him. But before he could even take a step, a bullet whizzed past his ear and hit the wall beside him. He hit the deck and crawled to the nearest turret, yelling into the radio that he was being shot at. The turret gunner looked in the direction his brother had indicated and opened fire, but not before seeing a white flash from the same spot where the bullet had come from. The gunner reported seeing the flash and the figure of a man who looked to be waving at them. As soon as the gunfire stopped, the voice in his headset came back on. "You have a visual on the west side of the building? Pete, you have a visual on the west side of the building." The voice was close to his brother's position. Looking back to the turret, he could see the muzzle of the gun pointed directly at him. He froze. The voice said, "You have a visual on the west side of the building. Repeat, you have a visual on the west side of the building." He was being hunted. The voice wasn't coming from the radio. It was coming from inside his head. He closed his eyes and screamed. When he opened them again, he was staring at the muzzle of the gun. But when he looked up, he saw no one. He was being watched. He knew that, but he couldn't see anyone. He heard footsteps near the turret. Someone was walking toward him. He was trapped. Suddenly, the voice in his head stopped. Footsteps got closer and closer until someone stood right in front of him. The gunner peered down from the turret and saw the body of an Iraqi soldier lying on the ground. It was the same clothing as the man who had been waving. But when he did, he saw the face of the Iraqi soldier lying beside him, staring back at him. He jumped up and screamed, "That's not possible." And then he passed out. When he came to, he was sitting in a chair in the medic tent. The medic looked at him and said, "What happened?" He described what he had seen and felt, and then pointed at the dead Iraqi soldier. The medic nodded understandingly and said, "It happens. My friend's brother was okay after a month of leave and reassignment to another base. He says that he doesn't talk about it much, but when he does, people usually just roll their eyes and say, 'Yeah, sure, whatever.' Yes, but he knows what he saw and felt. He also knows that sometimes the enemy has the best camouflage of all." And that was the second story. I hope you enjoyed these stories from the R Let's Not Meet subreddit. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, if you have a story you want to share, please leave it in the comments down below. I might read your story in a future video. Anyways, thanks for watching, and have a good night.